after a few weeks, I was back in my home and I was sitting at the breakfast bar in my kitchen, right? And I was actually holding on to it because my balance was so bad. It was like 24-hour vertigo. And I was feeling that despair, that hopelessness all over again. You ever have one of those days? uh, why me? When is enough enough? Like, when have I paid my dues? When have I put in my fair share of struggle? I was supposed to be this beacon, right? I was supposed to be a voice for others struggling. And instead, I was knocked right back down to the mat. Now, remember in Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning, how he gave himself that, was it like the 5-minute rule? And there's only so long you can spend in a pity party, right? Until you just have to do something else. And in EOD, there was a saying called, there's a phrase called time on target. The Navy SEALs, they call it get off the X. And the meaning between both is that the longer you spend in one place, the more precipitously the danger becomes. Every moment you're there, it starts to multiply. The chances of an attack, chances of something going wrong. So you have to keep in motion. Get off the X, reduce your time on target. You don't want to be standing right on top of that time bomb. We got to keep moving. So I had to figure out right then and there, was I going to be spending my time on target right there at my breakfast bar, or was I going to get moving? So I gave myself the 5-minute rule. I let myself mourn the loss of my hearing for 5 more minutes, and I didn't even need that. As it turns out, once you make the decision, you just move forward. So I took the trekking poles that, actually, I did what anybody in my situation would do. I started a chocolate company. It was actually Thanksgiving time. And and we decided, Michaela and I decided that we were going to throw this huge spread, this huge feast, right? We're going to invite friends, family, everybody, all over the place. And we're going to just pack the house. It was going to be great. We're not going to worry about me and my situation. We're just going to have Festivus, right? And I started cooking weeks in advance. I started making cakes and pies and cookies and just put them in the freezer. I started making batch after batch of fudge. I would change the recipe a little bit. I would throw nuts and spices. I'd go to the liquor cabinet and dump a little there, a little bit there. And I do batch after batch and set it aside. And just do some more, put it in the freezer and pull it out on the day. But Michaela noticed 2 things. One, she noticed, this was like 6 months after the illness, and I still hadn't gotten my cochlear implant in. So for 6 months, I'm trapped in my body. If you can imagine for a moment, sensory deprivation. Being trapped in your body, your entire world ending at your fingertips. I couldn't get on the treadmill because my balance. I had to hold on to the side of like the counter while at the stove just to keep from falling over. And Michaela noticed those 2 things. One was a smile on my face. She hadn't seen in like 6 months. I was having fun. I was cooking again. I was doing something other than thinking about the terrible stuff going on. I had a purpose, a goal. I was leveraging just having something to achieve. Purpose. We all need that. We need goals to accomplish and need the sense of accomplishment. And that sense of giving value into a system, I couldn't wait to put smiles on other people's faces with my food. It was just kitchen therapy. The other thing she noticed was that the fudge was just piling up. I mean, there was more than any size crowd could eat in one sitting. So she started sneaking it out the front door, like you got to be real stealthy around a blind deaf guy. She started giving it away to neighbors and friends, and they started coming back and asking if they could buy some for the baby shower coming up or a birthday party. And the capitalist in me said, well, of course you may. And all of a sudden we had a business. Extraordinary Delights, or eodfudge.com. And if you can imagine, I poured everything I could into this, and so did Michaela. I built a pretty admirable gym in the garage, and if you can imagine, I had the treadmill, the stationary bike, a rower, and the newly acquired conveyor belt shrink wrap machine. I took those trekking poles that I used to take up into the mountains, and I started this crab walk thing, this daddy long legs thing, out to my mailbox and back. I'd come home in a wheelchair, and that was a huge step. It might be a small step by comparison, but little accomplishments add up. And then we would go down to the end of the block and back, and then to the gate of the neighborhood and back. And I'd be sweating and exhausted, but smiling. I'd accomplished something new today. I got back on my treadmill and I held on with that iron grip to the stability bar, and I'd hit the quick start button and just start walking. And then I would hit that speed up button once, beep, 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 beep. I walk a little faster each day until I was jogging. And I could hold on with just one hand. And then I got to the point where if I just touched the stability bar, I would realize where I was in relationship to the machine. I could stay safe, and I kept running. And within a year of getting out of the hospital, I ran my first marathon back, and it was my hometown, Akron, Ohio, the Rubber City Marathon. And I got my first sub 4-hour, and my fastest finish to date qualified me for Boston again. And I ran Boston again. And then I started going further. Tried my hand at ultras. And then on July 6th, just last year, I became the first blind, deaf person to complete the world's toughest foot race, the Badwater 135.